Hola!
Hello.
Thanks for joining us for this video.
Introducción al pretérito, los verbos regulares.
We'll have a brief introductory lesson on regular verbs in the preterite.
Objetivos.
Our objectives are to understand when to use preterite verbs and to be able to conjugate regular preterite verbs.
¿Cuándo usamos el pretérito? Para expresar acciones completadas en el pasado.
We use the preterite to express completed actions in the past. And to help you remember that, visualize a timeline.
Una línea del tiempo.
Anything that you can write specifically on the timeline, whether it's a point or maybe a line with a definite beginning and end, that represents a completed action in the past, and we can conjugate our verbs to express that action. Let's see some examples.
Ayer tomé un café con Julia. Hablamos por 2 horas. Nos reímos mucho.
So we can visualize all of these actions as points or lines, like a line marking 2 hours, hablamos por 2 horas, on our timeline, so we know they are completed actions in the past. Now let's see our AR verb endings for regular AR preterite verbs.
Haste. O. Hamos. Hasteis. Aaron.
Let's use the verb comprar as a good example of a regular AR verb.
Compré. Compraste. Compró. Compramos. Comprasteis. Compraron. ¿Qué compraste en el supermercado?
Compré muchas frutas y verduras. Now let's look at our verb endings for regular ER and IR verbs in the preterite.
Iste. Yo. Imos. Isteis. Hieron.
And that's right, we use the same endings for ER and IR verbs in el pretérito. Let's use el verbo vivir, to live, as a good example.
Viví. Viviste. Vivió. Vivimos. Vivisteis. Vivieron. ¿Por cuánto tiempo viviste en México?
Viví en México por 2 años. Where do we put accent marks for regular preterite verbs? Let's take another look at those examples.
Compré. Compró. Viví. Vivió.
We put accent marks on the first person or yo form of the verbs. Yo compré, I bought. Yo viví, I lived. And also on the third person or él, ella, usted form. Él compró, he bought. Ella vivió, she lived. This rule only works for regular preterite verbs. We'll learn in another lesson that irregular preterite verbs don't have accent marks. Cargar, que, sé. What am I talking about here? Well, Verbs that end with the letters car, gar, and sar have a spelling change.
Estos verbos tienen un cambio ortográfico, spelling change, en la forma de yo.
Por ejemplo,
Practicar, yo practiqué. Yo practiqué fútbol por 9 años. Jugar. Yo jugué. Jugué Crash Bandicoot anoche. Es mi videojuego favorito. Empezar. Yo empecé. Empecé a hacer surf cuando me mudé a la playa.
empecé, I began. Del verbo empezar, to begin. So I began surfing when I moved to the beach. So we can see that if the verb ends in car, when you conjugate, you change that C to a QU. Just like if the verb ends in gar, like jugar, when we conjugate, we change that G to a GU. And sar, we change that Z to a C. So just remember, cargar, sar, que, ge, se. And why do we do this spelling change? It's really all about pronunciation. Think about, how do we pronounce these two letters together? Se, right? So we would say practicé, but that's not how we want to pronounce it, right? Practicar, we want to keep that hard C. So that's why we change the spelling. Yo practiqué. Or how do we pronounce these two letters together? It would make a he, right? But we don't want to say jugué. We want to say jugué. Del verbo jugar, yo jugué. So that helps us explain why the spelling change happens, but you can just keep remembering cargar, sar, que, ge, se. Let's learn another something special for ER and IR verb whose stem ends in a vowel. Por ejemplo, el verbo leer. When we take off the ER ending, that gives us the stem, and it's left with a vowel, like le. So, for the él, ella, usted form, instead of adding IO, we strengthen that I to a Y.
Leyó.
Ellos, ellas, ustedes.
Leyeron.
Let's see another verb that's similar.
Oír.
Oír, to hear. Same idea. When we take off our IR ending, this stem is left with a vowel. So we need to strengthen our I to a Y.
Oyó. Oyeron. Mi gato leyó todos los libros de Harry Potter.
What about stem changers? Remember those verbs that have a vowel change in the stem? Well, for the preterite, only IR verbs have a stem change, and we're going to learn about those in another lesson. But for now, remember that AR and ER verbs don't have a stem change in the preterite. Por ejemplo, pensar. Pensar, to think. You learned that in the present tense, you have an E to IE stem change.
Yo pienso.
But in the preterite, no stem change.
Yo pensé.
Otro ejemplo, volver. Volver, to return. You learned that in the present, there's a O to UE stem change.
Mi amiga vuelve.
En el pretérito, no hay cambio. There's no change.
Mi amiga volvió.
What are some words we commonly use with the preterite. Let's learn these words, and they can also help us recognize when to use the preterite to express actions completed in the past.
Anoche.
Last night.
¿Qué comiste anoche?
Comí pavo con puré de papas.
Ayer.
Yesterday.
Mi abuela me llamó ayer. Anteayer.
The day before yesterday.
Ellas llegaron anteayer.
De repente.
Suddenly. De repente empezó a llover. El año pasado. La semana pasada.
We add the word pasado or pasada to mean last. Por ejemplo, el año pasado would be last year. La semana pasada would be last week. And notice that we make the ending o or a depending on the gender of the noun we're describing, right? So el año pasado, masculine form. La semana pasada, feminine form.
Nevó 3 veces el año pasado. Almorcé con mi amiga Gabriela la semana pasada. Una vez. 2 veces.
Vez means time, as in how many times we do something. So una vez is one time or once. And we make it plural, dos veces would be 2 times or twice. And I'm sure you can guess how we'd say 3 times. Tres veces, cuatro veces, 4 times. So if we want to talk about doing something once in the past or twice in the past, we could say this with a preterite verb.
Nadé con tiburones una vez. Comimos pizza 2 veces la semana pasada. Ya.
Already, we can use ya. One of the ways we can use ya is to express when we've already done something.
Ya desayuné en casa.
I already ate breakfast at home. Ahora, a practicar. Pause the video and fill in the blanks with the correct form of the verbs in the preterite. ¿Están listos? Are you all ready? Vamos a leer las respuestas.
Yo bebí 2 vasos de jugo de naranja con el desayuno. La última vez que nosotros almorzamos aquí, tú comiste una ensalada y la sopa del día. Ayer yo llegué a la fiesta a las 7. Nosotras bailamos toda la noche.
Ayer yo llegué. I arrived. Did you remember cargar, que, se, that spelling change? Llegué.
Mis amigos leyeron muchos poemas para la clase de literatura el año pasado. Ahora tenemos algunas preguntas para ustedes.
To practice, you can write your answer to these questions in the comments and we'll give you feedback, or send me your comments or any questions you have by email as well. Las preguntas.
¿Qué comiste esta mañana? ¿Qué bebiste? Esta mañana comí cereal con leche. Bebí un vaso de agua y 2 tazas de café.
So these are some good examples of answers. And now we'd like to know, what did you all eat and drink this morning? ¿Qué comiste y qué bebiste? Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much.
See you in the next video.